Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to today's World of Warships video, being an upgrade commander build video on the newer released Spanish cruiser line, the Tier 7 Spanish heavy cruiser, the Asturias, or Asturias, something like that. Anyhow, sorry for the names, it's always a little bit of a challenge as we're giving releases more and more ships. Anyhow, that out of the way, we're going to look at the playstyle of the ship, the armor scheme. We'll look at the modules, upgrades, commander skills, consumables, all that stuff. So getting right into it, let's talk a little bit more about the play style of the ship. So one of the things I like to do is just defining the ship, right? It's a cruiser, but what kind of heavy cruiser is it? We know it's a heavy cruiser. Is she a brawling cruiser? Is she a mid-range cruiser? Is she a long-range cruiser? I would probably say, more or less because of the armor scheme in that this ship plays better the mid to long range. So let's say at tier 7, I would say mid range, I'd say 10 kilometers and back. I mean, if you're going to get high tiers, 8s and 9s, you know, mid range, I would say then becomes more like 12 kilometers. But 12 kilometers and back is probably where the ship does best, more because of her armament, but primarily because of her armor scheme, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. These 2 and 3 millimeter guns do have rather flat shell ballistics. Their shell velocity, if I remember correctly, it's not too bad. It's pretty good. So that helps able to land more salvos accurately, as long as you're able to judge, of course, the enemy speed of the ship well. But let's talk about her armor scheme. Okay. So the front and back, as you're seeing here, is at 16 millimeter. Yeah, not so good. So a lot of things, that's like destroyer armor. Okay, and then we're talking 13 millimeter on the superstructure. So things begin to look really bad in the fact that this is a heavy cruiser. Now you can see they have a lot of different, some coloration variation here. So you have a slight icebreaker, 16 to 50 down here, but most people aren't shooting you down here. They're shooting you more up here. Now, when you go along the armor belt, it's 30 millimeter, which drops into 150 millimeter. And then you here on the back, you're also seeing a 50 millimeter. And then you're seeing some of that bottom armor scheme, torpedo belt protection plating over the citadel. All right, now if I take away all this armor, we get to the citadel, which, yeah, it's an exposed citadel. So you get punished really easily. The fact that, of course, you have not just 2 turrets in the front and 1 in the back, but you have 2 in the back, also means that your citadel gets lengthened out. So that is not that's not good. I mean, it's how ships are designed, but it means that the ship's very vulnerable. And because she's, I mean, if I take away the armor, layout, you can see that there's some curve here. So sometimes you have to be mindful of how much your forward turrets, your forward main battery is able to aim behind you, because you can still get citadeled rather easily. I've been surprised. I'm kind of kiting away dealing with battleships, and then they punch through maybe the bow or the aft end plate, stern plating. They come through, then they citadel me right through the stern. So you do have to be mindful of that. Overmatch will definitely kill you in this game. If you see tier 9, oof, tier 7, the ship's I would say good, versus bottom tier ship's good, but as soon as you start seeing tier 9s, the ship's going to suffer because there's just so much overmatch in the game once you get to the higher tier. So high tier experience with this ship is going to be rather punishing. Other thing I need to make mention of is your plating armor scheme on your main battery. 150 on front, 75 on the sides, 70 on the top, and 70 on the back. So normally you'd see some stronger armament or armor on the rear of the main battery turrets, but that's not the case. So your strongest armament is on the front. So do keep that in mind. These turrets are easy to get incapacitated by other cruisers and battleships. Going into the your modules. So here we have your just standard main battery. There's no upgrades for it, nothing to further research. Your reload time is 13 seconds. 180-degree turn time, 22.4 seconds, and that's not with main battery modification in the third slot. Maximum HE shell damage, 2,850. Maximum AP shell damage, 4,800, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at the armament. Your hull goes from 37,200 hit points to 39,600 hit points. You can also see you get a bit of a buff to your A defense and maneuverability. The A is nothing to write home about. You'll do okay-ish against tier 6's CVs, but tier 8's, yeah, you're not going to be able to do much against at all. A little bit of maneuverability buff, so that is most welcomed. We want to see a bit better. Your rudder shift time is 10.2. Your turning circle radius is 860 meters, so a rather large turning circle radius on a tier 7 cruiser. So you do need to be mindful of your positioning. Torpedoes, 106 seconds, range 8 kilometers. So they're not like short range in the sense they're like 4 or 6 kilometers torpedoes, but the fact that they're 8 helps you a little bit, especially for kiting, maybe from enemy forces pushing into you, and maybe they do wander within your torpedo range. Maximum damage, 50,867. Torpedo speed, 61 knots. So these are a 2x4 rack, meaning you get 4 torpedoes per side, so 8 in total. Main battery firing range stock, 14.3 kilometer. Researched, 15.7 kilometers. Much more helpful. You do also get access to spotter plane, which I do advise using here on the Asturias. But that is going to help you, but you're going to want to pick up the hull first and then pick up gunfire control system afterwards. For propulsion, you have decent speed for a tier 7 heavy cruiser actually, 35 knots. With Sierra Mike flag, you can boost that up to 36.8 knots. So, good to see. First slot, I want to recommend the main armaments modification 1. This reduces the risk of your main battery and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Your main battery survivability, torpedo tube survivability is plus 50%. Your main battery repair time and your torpedo tube repair time, if either they should become incapacitated, is negative 20%. So that is, I think it's a good move to have. Also for the fact that your torpedoes are exposed just on the side of your ship. Often you see the torpedoes exposed on ships just on the side. So in a lot of ships, HE spam is focusing more this area. So having the main armaments modification 1, I would advise. You're not building in secondaries, you're not building the AA. You don't need a magazine modification 1. Risk of ships magazine detonating, negative 70%. You're playing randoms, clan battles, ranked. You're going to want to take Juliet Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ships to magazine detonating. For tier 7, I don't see a necessary reason to have spotter aircraft mod 1. Maybe when we get to the higher tiers, we could talk more about that, but at tier 7, not so much. A lot of things wrestle with range, and you have decent, at least your 15.7. And the spotter plane gives you some more leverage when you're facing tier 8s and tier 9s to distance yourself a bit more. In terms of the standard upgrades, I would recommend the engine room protection. This reduces the risk of your engine and steering gears becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Engine and steering gear repair time, if either they should become incapacitated, negative 20%. You saw in yesterday's battle, I'll put it at the end, we were, our propulsion got knocked out. So we were still moving a little bit, but we were kind of more coasting, I guess, a bit dead in the water. So building into that is helpful, especially with how weak your armor scheme is. Now, if you really like playing this ship a lot, then I would probably recommend the hydroacoustic search modification 1. This will increase the action time of your hydroacoustic search by plus 20%. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at the consumables. But if you are going to be playing the ship a lot, I would recommend this, but otherwise I don't see the need to spin the coal, because if I click on it, it's going to take me into Armory. If my Armory operates, for some reason, when I log into Armory, the first time I've logged in, it doesn't show me my resources, but today it is, so I guess that's good. So 17,000 coal, you can use a coupon here, and that will take 25% off, so it's more like 12,500, 12,750, something like that. Third slot, I recommend the aiming systems modification 1. I'll throw it up on the right side of the screen. Primarily, it's because of that maximum main battery shell dispersion. You're getting tighter vertical and horizontal dispersion. probably shave off somewhere between 5 to 12 meters, something like that, for each respective one. You also get a buff to your torpedo tube traverse speed and a slight buff to your secondaries, but it's mainly the dispersion. Since this is a more longer range, mid or long range cruiser, I like having better accuracy. The second option would be to take the main battery mod 2, which improves your main battery traverse speed by plus 15%. Right now, our main battery traverse speed is 180 degree turn time of 22.4 seconds, so you're probably getting this closer to 20, maybe 19 something seconds. So if it does bother you, then maybe you want to consider taking the main battery mod 2 if you don't like that slower traverse time. But if you just think in advance, having 2 or 3 seconds is not as big of a deal to me. I talked about that. Fourth slot, I would recommend the propulsion modification 1. Time to reach full engine power when accelerating is reduced by half. So that means if you're doing a bit of you're detected and you're firing right and you're maybe trying to avoid an incoming battleship salvo, accelerating out of the way, helping with torpedoes, avoiding torpedoes. Very helpful in my opinion. Now, some people do like taking steering gears modification 1 on their cruisers. This is something you can test if you're fine to spend the credits checking either one of these. Myself, I lean most towards propulsion modification 1. More in depth on the armament. So you have a 15% chance of starting fire on enemy targets. Your high explosive does pin 34mm, which is good because even with you've seen tier 8s, tier 9s, you begin to see a lot of 32mm. But really nice pin overall. Shell velocity of 900 meters a second. Really good. Armor piercing. So the funny thing is you go from I thought I saw somewhere it said 899, but yes, same initial velocity, 900 meters a second. A little bit of a long day. I've done a lot of talking, so my voice is hurting right now, so I'm a little distracted by that. But yeah, so you have 4,800 maximum damage. The IAP, with this being 203mm, works really well in tandem with the burst fire. I burst fired multiple cruisers go broadside on to me, and you see a lot of players. You see them do that all tiers, but I think maybe it's the newer players who are playing tier 5, 6, 7. They're still trying to figuring out angling and stuff. So you can punish that with this ship and having that access to the burst fire consumable. I'll talk about it now. But basically what this does is if I press the F key, as you can see on the screen, I get an additional burst. So rather than having 8 203mm guns in the air, I have 16 in the air within just 2 seconds interval between the individual shots. But you penalize. Sorry, let me get some water here. You are penalized. It's a 32-second reload time after you utilize this burst fire consumable. So as I demonstrated multiple ways of using it in yesterday's video, utilizing it on enemy ship as they're about to go behind an island, maybe use it as you're about to go behind an island, or you're trying to take out a low health target that's about to go dark. Those are some really good times to utilize the burst fire, especially if you want to secure kills or punish broadside targets. I guess I didn't say that. That would be a fourth way of utilizing this skill. Torpedoes, decent reload time of just over a minute and a half. Well, I guess technically it's a minute 46. But with Adrenaline Rush, you can get that down to under 100 seconds. Range of 8 kilometers, maximum damage 15,867, speed 61 knots, detectability range of 1.3 kilometers, so not bad. So just as your normal standard torpedoes in game. Range, the torpedoes help you if you're needing to be aggressive, which I don't really recommend per se, just because of that. You see how weak and the armor scheme is, you'll be punished pretty quickly. But if you find yourself in a situation where you need to utilize torpedoes, you have them, so that's nice to benefit. Azuma is jealous. Depth charge airstrike, you get 2 available flights, 1 aircraft per flight, and 1 bomb in the payload itself, so just 2 bombs, 6 kilometer range, and the maximum damage they can do, is 3,400. Reload time, 30 seconds. Consumable-wise, you have a damage control party. Action time 5 seconds, cooldown time 60 seconds, really standard for cruisers in the game. Unlike most Tier 7 cruisers, Asturias stands apart a bit more in the fact that she gets repair party. We can, with Superintendent, get this up to 3 repair parties, so I do advise doing that. Action time 28 seconds, cooldown time 80 seconds. Now your health pull per second is plus 198. If I utilize the India Delta, which I pretty much do with all my ships that have access to repair party, it's going to boost up to 237, so it means you can get a little more health back than you would without that combat signal. Now in the next slot, you have access to either the spotting aircraft or your fighter. So your spotter extends your main battery range by 20%, so that 15.7 blooms past 16, 17, 18 roughly. So that is definitely good to see here, especially if you face higher tiers or you just need that spotting vantage like we did on the enemy New Orleans in yesterday's game. Action time 100 seconds, cooldown time 240 seconds. We'll talk about that cooldown time in a minute. With the commander, number of consumables, you get 4. Alternatively, you also get fighters. These will never prevent the first strike, despite the fact you do have pretty poor AA on this ship. It's better to utilize the spotting aircraft, particularly because of how poor your armor scheme is. So I would advise that over the fighter. Now, if you're playing something like Brawls, maybe sure. If you're taking Asturias into that, fighter would make more sense, maybe even in ranked. But I would more lean towards spotting aircraft in general. You have also in the next slot had access to the hydroacoustic search or defensive AA fire. I recommend running the hydroacoustic search. It's a detection of torpedoes 3 kilometers, enemy ships 4 kilometers. Action time 100 seconds, cooldown time 120 seconds. Now I talked about you can take the hydroacoustic search mod 1. It extends your action time by plus 20%. Meaning that you're going to be going from action time of 100 to 120 seconds. You can buff that even further with Sierra Bravo combat signal, plus 10%. So that becomes 110. Then add on 20%, you'd be 132 second action time. So if you want to add that additional lengthened hydro, I would definitely advise doing that. And you get 3 of these. Defensive AA fire, your AA is pretty poor on this ship. I mean, the AA rating is just 51, and that's with the upgraded Hull B, which gives you a slight buff to your AA. It's crap. Even you struggle against tier 6 CVs too. So hopefully you don't see something like a Kaga, or really any tier 8 CV for that matter. It's just not good. I don't advise taking it. Hydro is just better all around, especially with submarines and warships now. The value for the hydroacoustic search is much greater than what it used to be. Other combat signals we'd probably like to equip here. I would probably do something like this. Cool down on our consumables, right? So now we can go to a 76 seconds versus 80. We go to 228 versus 240. We go to 114 versus 120. Speed, right? Ramming, damage caused by ramming an enemy plus 50%. Damage received when ramming an enemy minus 20%. If you have a lot of combat signals and you want to get the most, maybe even more out of the ship, then I could see increasing your fire chance from 15% to 17%. Commander-wise, we are building up some new commanders on the Spanish cruiser line, that's for sure. Here you can see what I have as a 10-point build. I will talk about this. There might be a little bit of some differences here in what you want to run, but I'm going to just talk with you what I've done so far. So we've taken Grease the Gears. This is a heavy cruiser. Typically on heavy cruisers, they've got that slower main battery traverse speed. So I've taken the skill here to help get us down to that, what did I say, 22.8 seconds? 22.4, excuse me. So I do advise that as a 1-point skill on your commander. If you have a 3-point commander, this is going to vary. Either take priority target, which tells you how many enemy ships are targeting you with their main battery guns, not torpedoes, just main batteries. Or you can take Eye in the Sky. Okay, there's a difference here. Now, as I'm figuring out this cruiser line, I've elected to go with priority target first because armor, or lack thereof. So it really helps me to be mindful. much more so because this ship can be punished really easily. If you're comfortable not needing this, which I mean I can be, but this is just a new ship line I'm still figuring out, then I would say Eye in the Sky, which reduces your consumable cooldown time by -50%, and it gives you 2 more spotting aircraft consumable charges. This is probably something I would like myself more for high tier. On the tier 10, you do get access to spotter planes still, so that's another skill to consider on a 3-point commander. For a 6-point commander, I'd recommend Adrenaline Rush. This is going to reduce your main battery reload time, torpedo tube reload time, airstrike armament reload time, secondary battery reload time, a slight buff to the AA. It's more for the main battery, you know, so then your salvo starts reloading at, like, let's say 12.5, 12 seconds. Just depends on how much health you lose. Concealment Expert. This ship has pretty poor concealment for tier 7, 12.4. Yeah, I think there's some battleships that rival this concealment range at tier 7. So because of how poor the armor scheme is, I do feel like this is something much more wanting to have. If it had really good armor, maybe not. Maybe you could make some arguments for utilizing some other skills, but for myself, concealment is what I would advise. Now going from here, I would probably say you could either go Superintendent first or Survivability Expert. Superintendent is going to give you additional spotter plane. You go from 4 to 5, Repair Party 2 to 3, Hydro 3 to 4, right? Because I lost all my health in yesterday's game, so maybe having that additional Repair Party could have helped us a little bit more, but it was just a really bad scenario and being a 1v3 there by the end. Then for a 16-part commander, I would advise picking up the Survivability Expert. Now it's going to extend you from 39,600 to 42,750. That much greater capacity in playing and living just that much longer. So I do like that here. And then after this, for a 20-point commander, I'd advise going for the top grade gunner. It gives you a permanent bonus to your secondary battery and -10% reload time. Can be activated if there's a ship within your enemy ship within your stated detectability range. So that would be the 12.4 with how we have this built, right? -8% on your main battery reload time. So you're shaving close to a second off, maybe just under, but really close. Okay. Then after that, I would probably tell you to go for Last Stand. You saw that with the armor scheme and just that the ship can be punished rather easily. This skill helps your ship to remain partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine and steering gears incapacitated. So this is one way of looking at this ship line, going for this build. Now the only thing that I'm going to critique on this is dropping priority target and going for Eye in the Sky. Now I know there's some players who don't actually care too much for the Adrenaline Rush. I really like it because it gives me greater DPM, you know, so you could drop Adrenaline Rush and then you pick up a priority target, leaving you with 1 point. And then maybe Gun Feeder is what you would go for, right? Or maybe the other thing you could do is you could give up Last Stand, take Incoming Fire Alert, and then take Eye in the Sky. That might be something actually I consider more so here. I don't always have that steering gears and rudder or propulsion knocked out. It's just something that can happen. So I think actually what I would do is I would probably drop priority target and pick up Eye in the Sky and then just take incoming fire alerts. That's what I would feel pretty comfortable in doing here. Now I would just go ahead and pay now to redo this, but we're about to get a free commander skill reset because we're getting new skills for destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. And as of update, the next update, were we in 12.10 now? I don't even remember now. I think 12, maybe it's 12.9. We're in. You know, I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll have it in the description below. So much more probably but with Eye in the Sky. This is probably what I would do. Drop priority target and then pick up that skill. So if you have questions about a skill I didn't cover, I don't really necessarily want to drag this video out longer here on this Tier 7 cruiser. She's good, but she really plays around. Sometimes it feels like Wargaming designs the ship around the gimmick button, which, I mean, they have done before. Example being the Dutch cruiser line. So if you take good advantage of the burst fire mode, that can definitely help you out. She has a decent set of consumables, but she really lacks in the armor. But Wargaming has given other things to this ship, like torpedoes, I think, to help make up for that really bad weakness for a heavy cruiser to have such abysmal armor, which kind of almost wrestles with light cruisers. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I appreciate it, and we will catch you next time. Take care.